Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joe, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is your other casual host.
Brian, hi, how's it going?
Not too bad, Brian. How are you from the other side of the living room table?
Yeah, well, you see, that's more accurate for what we usually use. We're at a coffee table.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Joel has given up on hope of going back to the office at any point at this point, and went to his office last week to pick up his standing desk extension thingy for his work desk, which is an absolute mechanical monstrosity.
I won my moments, yeah, and I hauled a incredibly awkwardly shaped 30 kilogram big of twisted metal back to take up our usual recording space. So now the person in the apartment opposite me can watch me stand up and down with the desk every 25 minutes or so. And
we will inevitably kill our second cat using the standing desk.
Oh yeah, he will fall asleep underneath and then Booker pancakes.
Get squished.
So we are talking about, as we tend to talk about, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And this week we're looking at episode 20?
This is episode 20, yeah.
20, Spiral. I.e. the one where they run away from glory.
Yeah, they run away from glory and they get accosted by the knights. Okay, well, let's do Buffy and summary. So, this episode was directed by James A. Contner, who last directed I Was Made to Love You, and was written by Stephen S. DeKnight, who wrote Last Blood Ties. And it was first aired on May 8th, 2001. So here's your Buffy and summary. Buffy and Dawn escape. The Scoobies and Spike leave town. On the road, they are attacked by the Knights of Byzantium, who wound Giles seriously. They warn that Glory's use of the key will destroy the universe. They're prepared to kill an innocent child. Sorry.
Any particular innocent child? Or?
Yeah. Besieged in a service station behind a magic force field, Buffy rings Ben to treat Giles. Ben turns into Glory and seizes Dawn. Buffy lapses into catatonia. I saw the word wound there and I was like, wound.
Yeah.
I was like fully like struggling to not say it as wound.
I'm going to tell you said universe.
Did I?
A little bit. Destroy the universe. Oh no.
Fuck off. Yeah. So, how are you, Joe?
Good. So I think the most interesting thing we've done this week in terms of what we've been watching has been to Brian very kindly has been allowing us to push through some of the stuff on our to-do list, on our watch list.
Yeah, because I like watching stuff that I'm excited about, and Joel's like, no, let's keep working on the things that we don't enjoy anymore. Our friend Keen, who we mention all the time, who listens to the podcast, he still does, I think.
Well, he likes to listen and push through things he doesn't enjoy. So,
that's what I was going to say, is that he like obsessively finishes things. Like every so often he'd be like, oh, how's that game going? And he'll say, it's shit, I hate it. And I'm going to finish
100
it.
100 hours.
Yeah, 100 hours. Like Neo, he spent months trying to get through Neo. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh, what would you give that out of 10? He was like 5.3.
Grim.
Yeah.
But we've all been there. So I
have not.
Okay, many places, many people have been, you have not been, but the average person has been there. But
I think the worst TV show I've ever finished was Angel, probably.
True, and now you're watching it twice. So
I'm just kidding. Angel's way better, higher quality than most TV shows.
No better than the rest of us. But
what's the worst TV show you ever finished?
What's the worst TV show I've ever finished?
Yeah.
Oh God, not finished, but I've watched like 8+ seasons of 2.5 Men. Now this was in my teen years, but like, that was quite bad.
Yeah,
and because I kind of didn't, I just didn't know you could stop watching things if you watched it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was gonna say Battlestar Galactica is probably mine, but I didn't finish it. So
no, you didn't. So what's the sort of thing you've actually finished?
Like maybe New Girl. Maybe I was gonna say Parenthood, but again didn't finish it because I stopped being good. God, I don't know. I don't know what the worst things I finished.
What's one of the worst things you watched a lot of then?
The worst thing I've sunk an amount of hours into is definitely How I Met Your Mother. I watched like I think 10 seasons of that, something like that. Because like the first couple of seasons, very enjoyable, very easy to put on in the background, and it just gets so shit. It's unbelievable. But I never finished it, thankfully, because obviously the conclusion of that was the worst conclusion of anything ever.
Yeah. I think for me, the things that many people enjoy but which I watch numbers of, and I was like, it's not for me. It's probably, I watched a season plus, I think, of Riverdale.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, we watched that together. It was really bad.
And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I think potentially the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Like that would, to be fair, jokes aside, I don't.
The first season of that was really good.
It was. But jokes aside, I don't think we actually, even at my behest, really push through things if they're not working anymore. But I think what tipped that switch in my brain permanently was watching Sabrina and be like, I'm watching this. None of us were looking at the screen. We were just like, we have to watch it. And I was like, no, I could just do other things in my life. Yeah. Also, Parks of Drag Race.
So true.
We peeled off. We used to, as people did, we watched appointment viewing Drag Race, and then we used to watch Untucked as well. Because
our friends wouldn't talk to us if we didn't have all the references for Drag Race for this week.
Untucked being the not after show, but the behind the scenes kind of stuff. And then we started. But that was the tipping point. We stopped watching that, and then it was like, maybe we don't need to watch this bit and that bit, and it's all starting to come apart. Then.
Yeah, we didn't finish Drag Race Holland.
We that was fine. We were sick of watching drag queens.
Yeah, and now there are two seasons. There are 2 seasons of Drag Race airing at the moment, and which is very annoying. Thankfully, one of them is the UK version, which is 700 times more watchable because it's
it's just relatable,
real people rather than people from from like drag queens from the United States who. Yeah, no, that sounds awful. It's actually just like the UK has so many more reference points and lived experiences which are shared with Ireland than the US does. So I mean, like, if you have, like, last season there was a drag queen called Blue Hydrangea who was from Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK obviously, and it was so refreshing to see someone who would be like someone who we would know.
Yeah, who we could conceivably actually run into.
Yeah, who was a queer person on TV. Like, I've never seen someone who was a queer person on TV who we could actually run into. It was incredible. And I'd imagine that's a lot of people's experience watching Drag Race or watching early seasons of Drag Race was like, oh my God, people like me on TV.
Yeah. I think part of the problem as well is that for the US show, they've such a stranglehold on the format and the presentation of that, whereas for some of the sister products, they're like, there's less oversight, which is why it can actually be more interesting. Yeah. But to that point, what we've actually worked through were 2 things, or I almost worked through 2 things. One is The Owl House, which is available on Disney Plus, and is better than its premise belies, I think, initially, because it's, when I'm describing it, it's very like, I could be describing a number of shows. It's a girl who's obsessed with books about witches and magic and that kind of stuff, falls through a portal into a magical world, and then is a stranger in a strange land and wants to become the first human to do magic. In many ways, the premise of the Dragon Prince as well, and various other kind of lost in magical world stories. But there's a lot to say about the quality of it. One is that
the animation is gorgeous.
The animation is really good. Yeah. It's Disney quality animation. It's really good. Yeah. It does not take itself too seriously. I think of the 19 episodes in season 1, a large portion of them are just kind of people doing things and not a big weight. Definitely early on, there's not a big emphasis on here's the backstory, here's the lore,
mechanics
etc.
of the world, or has some darkness to it as well, underlying all that, which I always like. The supporting cast, supporting cast, are actually genuinely good in the sense that you have, like, your kind of animal sidekick who's great in this, and there's a terrifying owl that is the house, and that's quite good.
The titular owl house,
who's voiced by Alex Hirschfield.
Hirschfield is the gay resource center that was burnt down.
Right. Yeah. Alex Hirsch, who just created and led Gravity Falls, which would be an equivalent kind of. I don't think this is as high quality as Gravity Falls was. Gravity Falls was immaculate and unmatched, but this is a similar vein, or it's a similar follow on.
It's worthy of the same league, I think.
Yeah. It's that kind of prestige children's television show, in the vein of your Avatars, Korra, Steven Universe. Trying to think what else. Probably Gravity or Infinity Train if we get around to it. Stuff like that.
But very fun, very likable cast. Weirdly, some sneakily quite emotional moments happened. I was quite invested by the finale. And I suppose some of the notable stuff in terms of its diversity is that, like, the main character is I think she's 14-year-old Dominican American, and bisexual, which is unusual. Again, jokes, unusual on TV, very unusual for a children.
Don't joke about bisexuality, Joe.
Yeah, very unusual for a children's show. And is actually really strong representation throughout. And I think a lot of the kind of most significant children's creators of the last 10 years, so your Noelle Stevenson with She-Ra, Alex Hirsch with Gravity Falls, Rebecca Sugar was the obvious one I was looking for with Steven Universe et al. Have praised the Owl House because they said what this show is doing, and which their shows absolutely laid the foundation with, but they fought for one reference in a finale or an alluded to reference here or there. And then it was easier to do as time went on, but this is just out the gate. This is just what the show is doing. And it's really heartening to see. And I always feel very heartened to think that kids will see a number of different aspects of themselves represented in characters like this, not least that she's kind of, a chaotic, teen girl who likes magic and stuff, but like it's not cool. Do you know what I mean? She has element. It's not the kind of mythologized teen girl protagonist. She's kind of a mess. Yeah. And I think there's something very relatable about that.
I mean, what you've just described is Twilight, but I get what you mean.
It's absolutely not.
Oh my god, I'm just so clumsy. Lol.
Okay, well that was because her vampire power, which was latent, was actually to be incredibly graceful. So yeah, absolutely recommend it. It's just finished. It's recently finished its first season of 19 episodes. Second season has been confirmed.
It finished its first season of 19 episodes in early 2020, by which is what Joel means. But
yeah, well, in recent history, within the time vortex of recent history, and I think it's one to watch. So I've enjoyed that a lot. And the other thing we've watched, which we might talk more about next week after we finish it, but is Mrs. America.
Oh yeah, we've been catching up on that. I think we mentioned it when we started watching it.
Yeah, a lot to talk about there. It's essentially an all-star prestige cast miniseries, 9 episodes. Kate Blanchett is I nearly said Cat Blanchett. Kate Blanchett is the lead role. Margot Martindale, Rose Byrne, there's any number of people. Elizabeth Banks, etc.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg turns up as a cameo. Sorry, a woman playing Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The
character of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, turns up very briefly in one episode, but it's very nice.
And etc. in the struggle to try to progress the Equal Rights Amendment for women in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. And primarily or strongly from the perspective of Kate Blanchett, who plays Phyllis Schlafly, who is a conservative opponent to it. It's kind of fascinating because it's all stuff we know about, but not anything I think we know about in enough detail. Yeah. So it's very, very good. But I think we'll elaborate on that after we've kind of seen how it works out, which I was... To be honest, I was shocked to realise it still hasn't been resolved in any kind of definitive manner.
Yeah, totally shocking. Oh, what's nice is tomorrow is the inauguration of Biden, so this is going to come out on the same day. So congratulations, Americans, on surviving that. And here is your gift. It is our podcast. Enjoy on your day of inauguration. If you're a Trump supporter and you're listening to this, I'm shocked. Yeah. But, hope you have a good 4 years.
I don't think Trump supporters do podcasts.
Oh, of course they do. Where do you think they get all their conspiracy theories?
We're not going to do a collab with Joe Rogan anytime soon, I don't think. I saw a tweet doing rounds this morning, which was someone saying, lol, my middle school girlfriend was arrested for stealing Nancy Pelosi's laptop from her office.
Oh, was that her? Wow. Did you see she was planning on shipping it to Russia?
To Russia, I did, yeah. So, speaking of shipping things to Russia, the gang abandoning Sunnydale in Winnebago, trying to get as far away as possible from Glory in this episode. So we have the rare kind of chase episode of Buffy.
Yeah, in an extended reference to Stagecoach, which is one of Joss Whedon's favorite movies.
So this episode of Buffy Spiral is incredibly plot heavy. Probably for one of the few episodes of Buffy where I say to its benefit, like you have to have your main quest episodes, and this is one of them, and I think it really knows that. Unusual in so many elements of its presentation. One is the fact that they're running and that they're trying to hide and all that kind of stuff. I think a real sense of menace and dread throughout the whole episode, which was quite palpable, and a lot more backstory or context in this episode, what the key is, what Glory is, and what the risk factors involved are, which have been really kicked down to the latter half of the season, which I think is quite interesting. Yeah.
First off, very importantly, we find out where that scene is that Glory rips the front of the building off to find Tara, Willow, Buffy, and Dawn, and it's in either Tara or Willow's dorm room. Well, actually, probably I think they share a dorm room at this point.
They do. Potentially it's just a dorm room.
Yeah,
you know?
anyway, but it looks really blacked out, but it's actually just, it's a dorm room, because when Buffy and Dawn are escaping, they run through the university campus
canteen kind of
dormitory, like
hangout spot,
the lounge.
Where all the where famously all the Wiccas
congregated,
have their group meeting when Willow says they're a group of Wonga Blessed Bees, which is a really S-class line, I think. Yeah.
God, season 4 was so long ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So they escape. Glory gets hit by a truck, which is quite funny, and turned into Ben. This episode is interesting. I think it's a little rushed. I personally would think that, I think a lot of the content in it, in terms of the moral discussions therein, the plot advancement, a lot of it could have been put into the episodes, which were kind of a bit light in the ground previously. Wouldn't have felt rushed. Would have felt more like an escalation. But the actual the plot progression itself and the moral discussion therein are both reasonably good. I found it a little unenjoyable. Not necessarily because of the dread. I like a good dread episode, but this one didn't fully do it for me. It was interesting. So the first thing I think is interesting is the discussion around just leaving, running. I would have thought of it as a reasonably adult response to a situation, is to say, we can't do anything about this. Glory was just hit with a truck and it barely slowed her down. What can we do next except for running? And I think it's paired very nicely towards the end of the episode with Buffy realizing the mistake she's made in inviting Ben in, and basically they would have been fine in terms of escaping from Glory, except for that, well, also minus the damaged Giles and the surrounded Crusaders. But they were getting somewhere with it, essentially. Yeah, and Glory can't locate them. She can't.
No, and she's not particularly motivated anyway.
yeah, but she has no special tracking magic or anything like that. So the reaction that Buffy has in terms of feeling like she's done everything she can and she's exhausted every opportunity, every option, and it just hasn't worked, and what to do next is it's very relatable adult emotion. I think it's set up nicely here. And actually, it really reminds me of, and this is awful, is the whole idea of that kind of exhausted breakdown and when to do it and why, and the discussion therein, which is going to be in The Weight of the World, the next episode, really reminds me of Franny and Zoe, which is one of J.D. Salinger's novels, kind of.
Novels plural.
Anyway, which basically it's all about the character Franny has a breakdown, and it's kind of the discussion therein. And it's really, really good. If you haven't read anything by J.D. Salinger except for Catcher in the Rye, I'd recommend reading his entire bibliography, because it's 2 collections of short stories and and 2 novels. / one of them is kind of like a short story plus novella. So anyway,
it reminded you of that. It reminded you of that kind of.
Yeah, it did. Anyway, what did you make of the episode?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think that it was unusual, and I like that. As the seasons progress, you have to say with Buffy, generally each season they're what can we do differently with the big bad, and what can we do differently with the issue that we haven't done before. It's not there is another version of this show where it's just a succession of vampire lords every season. So I like that they're we have to run sheet, and the sense that I think as soon as you have her pulling the front off the building, it's we are fucked. We are genuinely, this is a class of enemy that is way above possibly what anyone can do. So I thought that was interesting. I felt that the you do feel the small screen nature of it to a certain degree, because as we kind of noted from our research, that there was plans or initial scripting for a much bigger Avengers style showdown between Glory and Buffy in the opening scene, and Joss Whedon was we cannot afford that in any way, shape or form. So there is an element of I actually caught myself at one point forgetting that Sam Raimi wasn't involved in the show because there is an element of when the Nikes on horseback are chasing the Winnebago. It's like, this feels like this is your uncle's Winnebago you borrowed for this student film a little bit. Yeah.
Additionally, there's also like, this episode just shows a lot of signs of production. We spotted 2 cameramen. No, it was just one cameraman in a red flannel shirt, but just the amount of
lenses.
Yeah, so we've talked about this before, but because this TV show was shot for 4:3 format, which basically is just like your standard TV format pre 2003 or so, because it was shot for that. And not for widescreen, but they actually were using widescreen cameras because you don't really use 4:3 cameras. That's like an unstandard camera size, and it's just like cropped usually for TV. They just planned to crop out a lot of the image at various points. So like
perfectly legitimate. Like
100%. So like when you see things like the that guy in that shot, totally reasonable that he's there because he wouldn't have been presented on TV. It's only on the DVD releases that you get to see him. But additionally, what happens is that when you're doing that, what you might do at various points is use lenses that are not designed for the sensor that you're using, or the camera stock or the film stock that you're using, whereby the image from the lens, because it's so widescreen, doesn't actually cover the entire frame. So, but when you crop it in, you can't see the lens at all. But on widescreen shots that we had there, you could literally just see like a curve around the screen because they use the lens, they use the lens that you could see. It's
like what you would most commonly see it intentionally in films if they're trying to indicate someone was being observed by a spy from a distance or something.
Literally,
I know this might be a very obvious question, but I'll ask you. On the VHS, presumably you wouldn't get that. You would be in 4:3 format, or you wouldn't.
Sure. So one of the problems here is that you had one of the issues around that is that VHSs are 4:3. I don't think there are any widescreen VHSs. If there were it's literally you were seeing a 4:3 image with black bars, if you get me. So it'd be like in the middle of the screen. VHSs were 4:3 format just across the board. So when VHSs started dying out and DVDs started becoming more popular, that's why you got more TV shows and more TVs and more productions being done in 16:9 format.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fascinating because it speaks to how television for such a long time was a very immediate entertainment format. It was something to be shown this week, and maybe if you got licensing, rerun it next year. But this longevity, which is now taking as such a given, I think culturally is a relatively new invention. And I think produced now are absolutely produced to be seen 20 years from now.
Well, even more fascinatingly, things are not just produced to be seen 20 years from now. So much content is produced to be consumed in one sitting or multiple episodes in one sitting, whereas obviously Buffy has such an episodic nature, which means that or serialized nature, which means that you're expecting there to be a cut at the end of the episode where a big thing happens, and next week you pick up the tension from that point. Whereas these days you can the temptation to end an episode on a cliffhanger is much less tempting when you're designing something for Netflix. Like obviously something like Game of Thrones worked perfectly for. You could finish an episode and be like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, the water cooler moment.
Mic drop, etc. But if you're designing The Crown, I mean, you absolutely design the episodes to be consumed as one episode pieces, but there's no temptation to to ramp up the tension to make sure that people come back next week, if you get me.
Yeah.
So things run on a lot smoother from one to another.
And the end point of that we see is things which are produced often, particularly for Netflix, which deliberately alludes to the fact that you're going to probably immediately roll over to the next episode.
Big Mouth or Joel McHale show and stuff like that.
Yeah, or Nailed It, I think, was always a good example of that. Yeah. The Nicole Byers Cake show being like, go on, put on the next one, we're going to be here, etc., that kind of thing. So I thought it was interesting in that respect. And I also found that there was quite a good integration of the what the Wikipedia calls the battle to protect the key. Kind of got like, it's unusual having a siege setting having kind of having to deploy all your pieces on the board, interrogating an enemy general and all that kind of stuff. That's not what Buffy tends to do. I actually think they handle it reasonably well. What I do find interesting though is that, and as we'll see with the death count in this episode, in comparison to, I think it was last week's episode that had no death count in it.
Oh, I can't remember.
I think it was last week's episode there was no deaths. There's a tremendous amount of death in this episode implied, and definitely all humans. And we see that the Night Spies anti-him, despite their religious, or not even necessarily, yeah, definitely religious, but it's weird because it's religious,
Cultish.
but it's like they have evidence for it.
Yeah.
Their cult-like zealotry. They were 100% human. Buffy identifies them as human, even in the kind of the recap from this episode.
Yeah. And
when Spike hits them, his brain hurts. So there's not much engagement with the fact that the Scooby Gang, including Anya, Buffy, I think potentially Willow, kill quite a number of them in their escape attempts. Now, if you're talking from a story point of view, from a general point of view, like absolutely justifiable. They're trying to kill them, fight back, it's a fantasy scenario, whatever. But the fact that the show has so specifically hammered on the idea of
humans being a different class,
killing humans being a different thing, B, the fact that the idea of whether Dawn should be killed to save the world is such a moral point of moral significance, and then finally the fact that Giles kills Ben in the finale being this thing that he can do that Buffy can't do. So I actually do think it was weirdly jarring that she like threw out an axe into a man's chest.
Yeah, and it's in some ways, for me, a lot of people have pointed out about this episode, and I have a couple of points about that. But for me, it's total plot fineness. You know, I don't see this as being an episode where Buffy changes her perspective on morality. I see it as a situation where she's being attacked by people, and this faction happened to be human. Is it worth exploring that? No, not really. And then the actual moral conundrum of, do I kill this person who's in front of me, who's not planning on killing me, who I can save the world by doing so? And Giles and Buffy, Dawn, Ben conundrum. Exactly. That's conversation about morality, whereas in this situation it's like grey mushiness, you know. But here's what Mark Field identifies as a list of various humans that Buffy has killed or maimed. Amy's mother in Witch, Catherine, who very much just gets frozen and
tortured.
The zookeeper in the pack, who Buffy really does not make much of an effort to not knock into a bunch of hyenas. Coach Marin fell into the sewer with the fish monsters. Buffy trips him, and she kind of tries to help him, but she doesn't.
Plausible deniability on that one, I think.
The Tarakan assassin, whom Buffy killed on the ice rink in What's My Line.
Was he human? I suppose he was, yeah.
Yeah, he was human, yeah. The terrorist Gruenstaller brothers, who shot each other to death after Buffy threw a corsage onto one of them.
The Germans, yeah.
Very similar situation to this, whereby, you know, you're not, like, if someone's jumping on your Winnebago and stabbing you and you kick them off, is that murder? No, not really. And Gwendolyn Post, whose hand she chopped off in Revelations. So all of those somewhat messy situations in a similar way to this, though, I think. So it's a far less, it's a much more, it's much less straightforward perspective than this. And actually, very, very importantly, the one that we always identify, Beauty and the Beast, where the rage steroid boy, who is a human, who is just experiencing rage, and that being exacerbated by the Hellmouth. Like, he's a human affected by the Hellmouth in the same way that Invisible Girl was, whose name I can't, Marcy in it
was Clear the Ball, Brian.
Out of Mind, Out of Sight, Clear the Ball. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's an unusual one, and it's I think funny enough, for an episode that is very much the conversation is about, is it moral to kill Ben? Is it moral to kill Dawn to save the world? Which is the classic trolley problem exacerbated beyond
the Winnebago problem.
The Winnebago problem. It's fascinating. And the trolley problem, for just in case you're not aware, is the Kantian philosophical dilemma, whereby if there is a train hurtling towards a group of people on a track, they're tied down, and to stop them, you can flip a switch to send those that train going on a different line, and instead will crash into just one person. Say, like, often there's often like the horrible like variations of it where you're pushing a fat man onto the track to stop it and stuff like this, but you kill him but you won't kill the other people. Anyway, it's the idea that like taking immoral action, does that just can taking an immoral action be justified in this kind of absolutist moral objectivist sense? Yeah, I'm a big moral subjectivist, so I probably just push the button, but whatever.
Yeah, again, it comes back to the conversation from this episode where I think you have to be quite embedded in the practicalities of your morality to actually think anything other than the practical solution in reality is what's going to happen. Yeah,
and there's an added oddness to this episode where the Knights of Byzantium are so specifically driven by a god instruction, where they're being told that the good thing is this, which is to kill the key and to do it, and that's the kind of moral that's still moral objectivism while they're doing the traditional morally subjective thing to do, which is an odd like complexity.
It's almost like these things are often internally contradictory. But that's the funny thing is, at one point I was like, there's plenty of cults and there's plenty of these kind of orders and stuff in the Buffyverse, but at one point I was like, is there God? Like God? Because they do bring out two ostensibly Catholic looking priests who are noted and listed on the Wikipedia.
I would say not Catholic, I would say Protestant for sure.
I know, I think Catholic. I think they were collared, they had the beads, they were saying things in Latin. Those are all signifiers for American television of Catholicism.
Yeah, but the Crusades are so specifically Protestant. Oh, yeah, actually the Crusades would have been Catholic. Yeah. They're pre-Protestantism.
But as I was saying, they're listed on the Wikipedia page as Heckle and alternatively Jekyll are the two priests.
Yeah.
So there is that element of like, and obviously no context is given nor needed for the Order of Byzantium. It does imply that they've been sequestered away from society for a long period of time.
It's more close to Los Angeles though, thankfully. Yeah,
exactly. And close enough they can bring their horses. I don't feel that. It's certainly not a cinema thing. I don't feel it's inconsistent. It's not like, oh, those stupid writers forgot Buffy's killed people before, but I do think maybe there could be scope in it for her to say, we started out with a really clear sense, when in season 1, that vampire is a monster, there's no human there, and kind of what to kill was really simple, and that this has become increasingly complex.
Especially with Spike there, who has been like pretty, I think this is kind of the conclusion of, will Spike be in the fold questions, because when he arrives with the Winnebago and Buffy, Giles and Xander object to Spike being there, and Buffy rightly says, like, he's gotten this for us, and he's the only person who has a chance against Glory if I get knocked out, basically. Yeah,
and like God help Spike at one point when they're stabbing their swords through the Winnebago roof. An insane decision. He grabs the blade of the sword with both hands and tries to hold it there until Buffy can fight them off.
Mm-hmm.
And then gets a handful of bandages for the rest of the episode for his troubles.
Do you feel like the Knights are underdeveloped in this season? They appeared once, and now they're basically the crux of the matter.
I think there's 3 factions in this war. There's the monks, there's the Knights, and there's Glory, and obviously our guys are kind of drawn into it. So I think ostensibly you could say they're underdeveloped if you were starting from 0, but like, what will I take out of Buffy to give time to know about Dante Chevalier and his Order of Byzantium? Like, I almost feel like their level of underdevelopedness is almost intentional, where it's like, whatever, like, they're fantasy people who are here to make something happen.
And to some degree they're here to give a bit of plot explanation to slow them down, and then to get mercilessly slaughtered, because the conclusion of the episode is Glory has come into the compound with being Ben does try to escape before turning back into Glory, but realistically he should have, I think he could have just not gone in, because
Ben is a very self-involved person. He's not. We can argue about whether or not he is a bad person or worthy of being killed or anything like that. But he is one of the most selfish humans that have had he's the most selfish human that has had a plot relevant position. He's like your man who she slept with at the start of season 4. Jimmy.
Scott? No, that Scott was in high school. Can't remember now. Yeah.
Chevy or something like that. But imagine if he was like...
T, starts with a T. Todd. Anyway.
Imagine if he was like a demon,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we have to say that across the length and breadth of Buffy, probably one of the single worst decisions Buffy's ever made has been to drop the shield and ask Glory to come inside, even though she's not aware of it. But like in terms of like,
it's unfortunate for sure.
Yeah,
I mean that alongside just the whole angel thing at the end of season 2. But I get what you mean in terms of their development.
What do you feel comes to the episode from the Giles getting so severely punctured? Do you feel that we're in any way meant to worry that he's going to die? Because he does. This is probably the most seriously injured.
Any of the Scoobies? Well,
like not Chris McCarthy, sorry, but like yes, but Cordelia got punctured as well. But it's up there, I think, in terms of actual injuries. Potentially, because like even when Cordelia gets skewered, it's like, oh, she's really hurt, let's get her to the hospital. Next thing, she's in the hospital, kind of. I know there's the whole thing about whether they'll find her, but I don't think anyone thought that Cordelia was going to die there. But watching this, I was like, shit, maybe he could die in this season. Yeah,
no, it's definitely a threat to his life, and that's like quite upsetting. And
Giles saying that how proud he is of her, and the most that any watcher or any man could hope for would be to have someone like her in his life to raise or whatever. Yeah, it's
quite upsetting. I don't really remember how he like fixes up in the next coming episodes, like, because last we see he's being kind of half punctured up and shot full of morphine by Ben. So
I imagine that between, like, I don't think we go immediately from this to resolving the Dawn thing. So there must be a gap where he gets to go to a hospital.
Yeah, it must be. And I think the way the world, the thing I remember from that obviously is the dreamscape stuff, where Willow goes to help Buffy out of her catatonic state to find a way to bring herself to like conclude the situation. And I don't remember, what the beginning of the episode is. I presume they must just like go to like a hospital and like take it from there to some degree.
I also think that the gas station in English apparently is called Four Aces.
Okay.
According to Wikipedia, which I trust, but which I don't remember being indicated anywhere in the episode. Well, I think the Wikipedia for this episode and what this episode is very funny for is taking, because Buffy's quite short on formal nouns for a lot of things. Like often things happen that don't have, it's not the battle for Winterfell or the rally at the wall, etc. So they often have to make up the stuff for the Wikipedia. So there's the battle to protect the key is what it calls this episode. Big Day is the day that Glory opens the portal. This is apparently called Four Aces, and then they consistently refer to where Spike lives as the Hawley Mausoleum, which I imagine it was the first time they killed something there, but like after that it's just Spike's place. So I think that the gas station was actually quite an effective location, quite a memorable location for this scene, given how incidental it is to the plot.
Yeah, no, it's a good place, and I think this episode is notable in the sense that I think it's the only episode that it takes place the majority outside of Sunnydale. Yeah, it was good. It was good for it, except for actually Anne specifically does that as well.
Definitely does, yeah. So something that the episode does as well, which is very plot significant and relevant, is that we get a download of a lot of information from General Gregor of like who Glory is, and up until this point, which is notable, all we know is that she is a Helgosh and that she has been somehow trapped here. But in this, we get that
she was one of 3 Helgods who were competing, and they were worried about her power, so they banished her. That
Ben was created only to hold glory, and she's obviously found a way to push through that. And specifically, that no one knows where the key comes from or what it is, but its power is to not only open the door back to Glory's dimension, but to open the door to all dimensions everywhere, which is the thing that Buffy as a show is trying to avoid, the age where the demons were everywhere. So it is, I think it does introduce a pragmatic question that, I suppose it's bizarre to say.
Joel is trying to like say this gently, but Joel would just yeet Dawn into the into the ocean if he thought that he had to save the.
I think that there are.
Sorry, Booker. If Joel can save the world by killing you, he'll do it. I
think they're a faction that has more to say for their point of view than most, because, like we've seen lesser apocalypses.
Apocalypse.
You know, in terms of, let's say, you know.
Angel's Apocalypse was lesser, I think. Well,
I think about, okay, so the big thing with season 3 was that they were going to release an old one, but the key could release all old ones everywhere.
Yeah.
And I do find that while I believe and I relate emotionally to the fact that Buffy has said, even though Dawn was created to be my sister, she's a real person now and she deserves a fair chance. Absolutely on board with that. But there's no way for her to know she isn't under the influence. She obviously has, to some degree, continued to be magically influenced by memories that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there might be an argument to say that maybe Dawn should die.
Yeah, and I think this show really nicely sidesteps it by having the Knights of Byzantium be so specifically dogmatic and skewed and having a religious bent to it. Because if you had a group of rationalists against the key, and they were saying, well, you could prevent the suffering of millions by making sure this one person dies. Sure, should we do that? It'd be very much more uncomfortable TV show.
I don't want Dawn to die, but yeah, I suppose it always comes back to the trolley problem of the question, or as typified, by say Spock in Star Trek, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one or the few. So
kill us both, Spock.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move into the dusting.
Okay.
So Buffy Bits. I don't have that many for the episode. I do have Jack Donner, who played General Gregor. Do you know him at all?
I do recognize him, yeah.
So the thing I know him best for is the episode of 6 Feet Under where where a soldier dies from Gulf War syndrome. That's what I mean, isn't it? Gulf War syndrome is where the amount of sand people breathed in or something like that.
It was a respiratory problem.
It was a respiratory problem. I don't know much about it, but anyway, and his brother is super anti the army, but the soldier is actually, he dies, but he's very he's still he's proud of his service, so they organize a
military funeral.
Yeah, and he gets given the flag and everything. It's been folded incredibly specifically,
incredibly tiny.
Yeah. This is the Wikipedia note says this is the first and only time Buffy kills humans. No,
as we've established.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that I thought was interesting is that Mark Field notes that the desert setting is very appropriate because it is so lonely, and it really does reflect Buffy's emotional barrenness at the end of the episode. It just, the sense of loss and lostness very much is reflected in the scenery. Any Buffy bits?
Yeah, one of the odd additions for this episode is we don't see any more of Jinx, who's the most consistent of Glory's minions, but they do introduce this new female minion whose name is Spork or whatever, but she's incredibly, she has a tremendous amount of lines, and she's really horny for Ben.
Yeah,
and it's all about how horny she is for Ben. It's weird.
It was not great.
Yeah, so I don't know where that was coming from. Otherwise, we see Willow kind of going down the road with her magics a bit more. We get the black eyes again. We get her doing some fairly effective energy shields, which can only be defeated by the rosary. And we see, I suppose, more of Tara kind of going down the road of being someone who needs kind of round the clock care. And all the different people who were brain sucked throughout the season reappear in this episode and come together to gather for the big day.
Yeah, and they're all they break free of their shackles in the mental health ward of the hospital, and they take down an orderly and then leave basically.
Reminding me a lot of that bit in the Power Rangers movie where all the pairings who have been affected by Ivan's ooze come to gather in the quarry in the center of town.
I really thought you were going to go for Children of Earth, but okay.
Children of Earth. Oh yeah, actually, sorry, good point as well. I was like, there was two things I thought of when you said that, which wasn't Torchwood Children of Earth. One was Children of Men, which like I don't think the tone was similar at all, and the other was Battlefield Earth, which is that John Travolta Scientology science fiction film.
Or the other episode of Doctor Who where the exact same thing happens, where everyone with type B blood is going to jump off buildings. Essentially, remember
that was the Christmas Invasion. I forgot about that actually. That was interesting.
That was really. You didn't say really good because you didn't mean it, because it wasn't really.
It was the first David Tennant episode.
Was it?
Yeah, it was, and he fights someone on the roof with a sword and cooks off, or he gets his hand cut off. Right, the whole thing.
Okay. Other things. So let's go to fashion. Sorry, one of my notes here is just lots of eating, and it's true.
Heavy episode.
So fashion moments. Ben in Glory's dress, a pretty significant fashion moment. Just incredible that he's able to fit into that dress. Yeah. She is a tiny woman. He is a large man. Whereas
when she morphs into his clothes, she just looks like, oh, wearing my boyfriend's clothes around the house. Yeah, kind of thing.
The unfairness of androgyny. Androgyny just means like women being masculine
as it's used. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. It should be androgyny should be neither, or well, no, it should be both. Whatever.
It should be whatever. No jokes about it though. I actually think it's been, aside from one good-natured joke about it, I actually think it's been short on lol, Ben is in a dress.
Oh, yeah. It could have so easily turned transphobic.
Yeah, absolutely. From a fashion perspective, I enjoyed Spike turning up in the Winnebago with like oven mitts on and big welder's glasses, looking like one of those CGI characters from Star Wars. Mm-hmm. What's that one you love? Borp Sprinkle.
Babu Frick. I love him.
He had a very Babu Frick vibe about him, I thought.
I love him. I don't understand how Disney have announced so many new Star Wars TV shows and not a single one of them is about Babu Frick. I want to see the Babu Frick's trilogy. Babu Frick is the most important character who's ever been in Star Wars. The only important character who's ever been in Star Wars.
So I like that. And I do love how Tara, in her compromised mental health state, is just dressed so comfortably throughout all these episodes.
Yeah, she's definitely comfy. Okay, death count. So actually, do you have it open? I have it open here if you want me to run through it.
I actually do have it open for once, but you can go ahead if you like.
No, you go.
So mostly, or actually entirely, Nikes of Byzantium and Associates die in this episode. So we have 3 thrown from the bus by Buffy. I mean, to be fair, we don't know they're dead, but they're kind of like that's probably not a safe thing to do. Throw them from the bus. One definitely stabbed with an axe by Buffy. Can you stab someone with an axe? That was called.
I mean, I probably wouldn't say that.
Yeah. One has their neck broken by Buffy, which is quite violent. Anya throws one from the bus as well. We get a couple of named Nikes in this episode as well. Orlando stabbed by Dante to put him out of his misery.
Head sucked.
Gregor, who is killed with a hubcap by Glory. Implicitly 2 clerics, Dante Chevalier and hundreds of Nikes by Byzantium, all indiscriminately just kind of torn apart by Buffy by Glory on her way out of the
in the space of like 3 seconds.
Yeah, because she's real fast and she goes real blurry when she moves real fast.
Yeah, she does. Okay, and a rating. Joel, what rating do you have for this episode?
Yeah, I would probably give this episode a 8.1 abandoning syringes out of 10. Like again, like not absolutely not an episode of Buffy. Be like, hey, let's put on this episode of Buffy. But like I think the plot is quite like compelling in terms of the threat. Mm-hmm. And I thought that they were putting some very unusual situations for the group and had to react to it. And I like when characters have to do that. I thought some of the performances are pretty strong. I really feel for Buffy, where I feel like she needs to sleep. You really do feel the pressure of like her mother has died. She's trying to deal with this thing that is only her responsibility, and like no one else can do it.
Yeah, like she has a moment in the episode where she's like, Mom, Riley,
Angle,
Dawn, all this stuff has happened like so recently, and I'm just.
And I think that Dawn has matured through this arc, and her appreciation of Buffy and her kind of dealing as well as she can with her own faith shows rather than tells that whatever her origin is, she is a Buffy, or she's a Summers woman. And she does have Summers blood. Do you know what I mean? I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, I'll probably give it a 7.8 Hell Bitches in Orbit. It was grand. Yeah, it was grand. I think it was like thoroughly enjoyable in lots of ways. I think it was a little messy. I thought the themes were interesting, and I'm mostly interested in what it's setting up, which is next week and the week after. And then we're on to season 6, which is wild. Okay. Cordelia Chase.
Yeah. So this week we continue on the Cordelia Chase with the mini arc of episodes in Lauren's home dimension, Pylea. This one's called Over the Rainbow. And we get what is essentially an episode of Xena the Warrior Princess.
So true. And a reference to Xena as well.
Yeah. So it's very much, all set in this fantasy setting. It's about Cordelia finding herself on the other side of the portal, realizing she's in this kind of fantasy medieval setting, and being taken by a demon farmer, being referred to as a cow. And we've essentially found out that humans in this world are treated as chattel, that they're considered cows, they're meant for carrying, etc. And that there's actually a couple of different demon races living here. One is the green horned ones that Lauren is part of, and the other the kind of weird red gibbety head ones.
That's the official name, isn't it?
Yes. And yes, and then there's the struggle from the Team Angel's point of view of trying to get to come over to find her and where she is and all that kind of stuff. There's a bit of back and forth with Gung around the fact that while he wasn't
present for the
or wasn't there with his crew, that one of them died, and whether or not he'll join them going through to this side, etc. And they have come through now. And I think that's really the end of Gunn's effective arc with his backstory.
Because like going forward, his connection is that he loves Amy Acker's Fred. He loves, isn't that
he
right?
does love Fred, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of his focus. Yeah. That's his storyline going forward.
So we see Fred's introduced properly in this episode. She's incredibly Texan, and so I know she is Texan, but it's really like they're like she is this lost librarian.
The accent as time goes on.
Yeah, she's this lost librarian girl from Texas essentially, and she's been there for 5 years in Pylea, and we get kind of an arc where Cordelia is kind of a slave and bullied and enslaved and all this kind of stuff, and they all have collars around their neck which will zap you, and also we eventually find out will explode if they try to get away. But she has her visions, and this is initially considered a curse. It is considered a curse, but then we're introduced to the cult who run this dimension called the Covenant of Trombilly, which are essentially Wolfram and Hart. We find out, and the kicker of the episode is after all of this stuff, that when the gang are taken before the Empress of blood-sucking, death-eating, murder, or whatever they call her, the kicker is she's been made the princess of the land, you know? Yeah. So it's really just progressing that. There's a lot of stuff around Lauren going home and how his dimension has no music and everything is black and white and there's no moral relativism and all that kind of stuff. And then one of the most significant things for the arc is that Pylea has 2 sons, which are composed differently to Eric's song in some way, which means that Angel doesn't burn in the song. Yep. But we do find in the next episode that something worse happens to vampires here. Although they can walk in the sun, they become something worse, essentially.
I don't remember that. What is it?
So essentially, the way they present it is, I think it might be after dark or potentially when he gets angry or when he would usually vamp out, he fully turns into a demon called a Vantal. And one of the things that's one of the suppositions, which isn't really carried by the rest of the mythos, is that in this dimension he's separated into his 2 components. When he's not vamped out, he's essentially human, or he can walk in the light, but this demon he turns into is the demon that's inside of him, the vampire demon. But like a lot of the other demons in the Buffyverse, what they call demons, if this is a demon, it's not a pure demon, it's just like a more, it's kind of like when
Spider-Man?
No, not Spider-Man. The Irish guy, Glenn Quinn. Doyle. The kind of demons out, and he becomes more feral. So it's perfectly fine. I would probably I think it's cohesive in this arc.
It's a bit of fun as well.
It's fun. What it does is Angel as a show tends to do this. It really takes the mystery away from any of the demon dimension stuff or anything like that, because it's visited so much. Like, this is very like, hark, here comes a cow. Yeah. Let's play the fiddle, yo-ho, etc.
It's such a bizarre tonal shift for Angel, the TV show, which a couple episodes ago was like, the episode where Angel doesn't speak and slaughtering a room full of executives.
Yeah.
And
now he's like, hey, there's something over there in that patch of sunlight. I'll get it. Yeah.
It's just, it's a bizarre tonal shift.
Yeah.
And I'd say it was very odd to watch alongside Buffy the Should I Kill My Sister show.
Yeah. So, but it's enjoyable. I would probably, I don't know, I because we're going to do half numbers, probably give it a solid 7 failed feminist gestures.
Yeah. Oh, would you give it a 6.5 otherwise?
No, I might have gone up a little bit.
Yeah,
like, it's not 8+ for me is like, this is a good episode.
Yeah.
This is a good episode of Angel, but this is like not a bad episode, but it's just an episode. I enjoy it. The comedy, I think, consistently is coming faster and faster, is better and better. Like, that lighthearted tone actually tends to often suit the show. I think Loring is a good addition, and this is all about Loring. Weird note that they make a point to point out that he is not gay.
Yeah. Which
he is. Do you know what I mean? Like, his entire characterization is about that. And one thing which I do think is a bit ham-fisted is that any setting, like any fictional setting where they do this, I think is ham-fisted, but particularly a lot of the language here, a lot of the stuff is around slavery
and racism,
and racism and humans being less than animals, etc. Doing that and having it being, God, isn't it so sad that Cordelia has been treated like the way that many minorities have actually been treated, but then having Gung in the mix there and not differentiating that experience at all.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't think that Angel's going to do a thesis on race relations, but like, it just reads poorly, where it's like Wesley, Cordelia, Gung, all three of these people are inconvenienced by slavery. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something about it which is like, oh.
No, it is. It's a bit odd. I'll go with 7 fellow feminist gestures as well.
I love when we agree.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for this week, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Yeah, no, we're all finished up for this week. Happy to have you with us as always. Hope you're well. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends, tell your sporks, mercs, and splooshes. And
how long did you have that in the bar?
Just straight off the top of the dome piece. And we will see you next time, dear listener, on Buffy Boys.
See yous.